in YouTube and LinkedIn and wherever you happen to be watching this live. I am Dr. Caroline Brookfield. This is Creative Lifescaping. This is a series I did regularly, and now it's my life. I just kind of do it when I meet interesting people. And I am so thrilled to share with you my exciting guest today. My exciting guest is Fuat Ramazanov. He's the director of the International Business Program at Ascension School of Management. And he's also pursuing a doctorate degree at the University of Calgary. He created the Creativity and Design Thinking business course for business students, and he is an amazing guest that I'm going to bring on in a second here. But the reason I'm so excited to share Fuat's work and his point of view with you is that he is an expert on how you can use AI to amplify your creativity, specifically in business. I know a lot of people are talking about AI, and there's a lot of pitfalls, and we're going to dive right in to this right away. So please welcome my friend Fuat. Hello, Fuat.
Hi, Caroline. Thank you. Thank you for
We're in
having
the
me.
same place. Look at that.
Yes,
What?
we are.
There's only one option for a virtual background on Restream, which is what we're using today.
I think so.
Yeah. But anyway, that's fun. I've never had a pool before, so I'm excited. So Fuat, tell me, so when I met you, I couldn't put the pieces together. And it's funny because I often get that. People are like, what? You're a veterinarian talking about creativity. So when I found out you were the director of this organization that deals with supply chain and quality, but then you're doing a PhD on creativity and AI for business, like, tell me how that happened.
Well, back in 2019, it was end of 2019 when I received the part-time teaching job, and which later became a passion and career. I didn't have an idea that creativity would become something like of interest for myself. But as an educator, I started exploring different ways of keep my students engaged. And then COVID started, and I was looking in ways to keep my students engaged in the classrooms and searching for different tools that exist for educators. And that kind of led me to explore some creativity tools, which I didn't know they're creativity tools. And but later I know that creativity tools. And like made me become curious about it. I started reading, I started using them in the classroom. It was online settings, was a bit difficult, but I adapted and used them. From there, my interest to experiential learning started. And it's learning by doing and applying, and evolved. And later I got an idea to start my doctoral journey. It wasn't creativity, the focus of my doctoral journey in the beginning, but it became creativity later. I started doing more reflection on my journey and how I do it and so on. But also, when I teach to my students, I always look for the ways that what industry wants. And I always refer to the different reports from large organizations, from different associations. And I often see that creativity is in the list of the skills that demanded today and in the near future by many of these organizations. And I also see that professional organizations and employers, they complain that while demand for creativity is high, the supply of creativity is short, and there's a gap in between. And as an educator, I was thinking, okay, what can I do to shorten that gap, or what can I do as an educator to do anything about it? And that's how my interest started in exploring that concept further.
Yeah, that's amazing. And actually, I had a very similar journey, because when I decided I wanted to do public speaking, I kind of wasn't sure what I wanted to talk about and how I wanted to help people engage with more fun in their life. And I was the same. Creativity is kind of a happy accident for me. And I love what you said about organizations asking for creativity, because the World Economic Forum in the 2023 Future of Jobs we talked about, creative thinking is number 2 skill. But if you scroll down, what nobody's talking about is that nobody is investing in this. And people complain that they don't have creativity, and maybe they don't know how to get it. But it is trainable, right? Like, maybe tell me about how you use, how you help students amplify their own creativity, and how you use AI in your courses. Maybe give us some specific ideas, like how this helps them to amplify their creativity.
Yeah, the idea to develop a course about creativity came when I personally realized that every person is creative. And I think that by teaching that, I make students appreciate their own creativity. Maybe what Margaret Baden calls peak creativity, like your personal creativity. Because when students think of creativity, and that's a question that I ask them, what is creativity? They think of something big and great, or something they need, like big C concept kind of creativity. But in fact, it's everyday creativity. We do that. And in my course, I make students to appreciate that. I use different exercises. Some are known, well known, like exercises from back in the day from Guilford and Torrance. But I also use some specific exercises that I develop, and I also use exercises in combination with AI that help students also appreciate how AI can support humans' creativity in this way, and it works. It shows some good results.
Yeah, can you give me like maybe a specific example, like without obviously naming any names, but let's say there's a project they're working on, or what are some ways that they might use that AI? Is it ChatGPT, or maybe we should specify? And actually, before you answer that question, I just want to see if anybody's watching and you have any comments or questions, please jump in. We're excited to if you're on the replay, you're welcome to contact me or Fuat after the fact. And I'm just going to pop up the your LinkedIn code, your LinkedIn here, Fuat, so they can find you. So yeah, so maybe can you give me a specific example? Like, are we talking ChatGPT? Are we talking a different AI platform?
I speak about ChatGPT, like generative AI platform, and I use like some like exercises to get students engaged in divergent thinking, and then I invite them to use AI to complement the number of ideas they generated with what AI can like give them. And I kind of ask them to repeat the cycle several times. But I caution my students that AI doesn't give the like accurate information every time. And I also show them examples where AI doesn't give an answer to what humans may have thought about, like, and kind of show them that, hey, here's AI, but it's not perfect yet, but it's evolving. It's your creativity. Again, the whole purpose of me doing it make humans appreciate their own creativity and understand how AI can be used. Examples can be different. It can be like real life problems. It can be like some challenges that humanity needs to solve. I personally believe that climate crisis is a result of creativity crisis. So some of the exercises focusing on, for example, how we can reduce waste, or what we are doing about that. So I kind of see what students think, and then I ask, okay, now go to the AI and see what AI gives you. But you know that, and I'm sure many who watch know that, it's divergent convergent thinking cycle. AI does a good job in terms of generating lots of ideas. That's what we call fluency. And students can come up with a list of 20 ideas, then AI can expand it to maybe 100, but it's converging where we need to select and refine these ideas. And again, the whole purpose of doing it is just to show that AI is a tool to support students here.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, because I was supposed to say that and I didn't, about the divergent convergent. So thank you, Fuat. And I think that's a good point. And I have ADHD, so I tend to jump into the middle of topics, which doesn't work well for my neurotypical friends. So, but yeah, the divergent and convergent, I think that's how I use AI, as a divergent tool. And I think one of the challenges to divergent thinking, and you mentioned the fluency, and how when we are diverging, we want a quantity of ideas. We're not worried about the quality. It's important not to judge our ideas when we're diverging. A time to judge our ideas is in the convergent stage, but we tend to judge our ideas. I feel like there's two layers. There's the internal judgment, like, oh, that's a bad idea, and they're going to think I'm weird if I say that. And then there's the external judgment that we don't have the budget, we've tried that before, that'll never work. And so what I love about AI is the way I use it is I put in a prompt. So for instance, I was speaking this week, I was doing a keynote at a small business group in Edmonton. And just to show them how I use AI, I put in the prompt, hey, I'm a keynote speaker, blah, blah, this is what I talk about, I'm going here. What's a product or service I could sell to them? I didn't actually have a product or service. I was just trying to show entrepreneurs and business people how you could use AI for divergent thinking. Then it came up with this idea of selling a workshop. And I said, okay, that's great. What about a product? And they came up, and AI came up with the idea of creativity cards. And I said, what if it was like magic? And they thought, and then it went on this rabbit hole. And I said all these things. And at the end, I was like, well, what if they're all wizards and sorcerers? Or what if they're aliens and my job is to prevent them from taking creativity back to their home planet? How would I do that? And then once I picked a product, I was like, make me a marketing plan. And then I could put in something like, what if I was marketing to aliens? Or what if people had no money? Or what if I was marketing to people who were from 500 years ago? And so I think what I love about AI is what you said, it gives you that fluency and that quantity of ideas, but it also gets away of that judgment, because you can put whatever you want in Chat GPT. You don't have to think, oh, they're going to think I'm weird if I put in what if they're aliens. And it just helps you practice that following the rabbit hole and just jumping from concept to concept without self-editing. And so I'd love to know what you think about that, and if what you think about the idea of this judgment piece and how AI can help with that.
Yeah, I agree with what you said, but I also see AI can help to overcome fixedness. That's a mental block that we as humans have when we only see the item or product or like something being used in one way. And when I ask students, for example, it's usually like a welcome and brainstorming exercise at the beginning of every class to generate or identify many possible use of an item. They typically see that somewhere like 20 ideas, but then they go to ChatGPT, they come and they see how many ideas. So this is kind of helping to overcome fixedness. And I think that's a big strength of AI at this moment, as I see it personally, that really helps to facilitate and improve the brainstorming session, like to give, like, again, as what was we discussed, like the quantity side is great, so we can come up with many ideas.
Yeah, and I'm sure you read that recent study where it was published in Nature, where AI outperformed most humans on a divergent thinking task, but it didn't outperform the most creative humans. And so I always think, imagine what if we could do both, put both of those together. So from a tactical basis, so we're using ChatGPT, which is a language model. So that is not going to create a picture for you, although you can use it to create prompts for that. But ChatGPT is a language model. So can you maybe talk us through how you coach your students on writing an effective prompt? Like, what does a prompt need to have to make it the most effective? Or is there a way that they need to do that?
Well, I probably start with explaining the model of creativity, because most of the definition of creativity focused on this 4P model, which is about a person, process, product, and press. And I explain this model again to make them appreciate the human side of creativity. And what I see this model giving us is we as humans engage in creative process to create a creative product, which is an output. And most of the time when I do search about how AI can be used and to support creativity, the findings of my search are again focused on the output. I personally see that AI can also benefit the input side of the process. And I actually myself and I also encourage students to experiment with prompts. The reason is we as humans, our brain is a pattern machine. We build patterns and we really follow them. When we use prompts, we kind of again making our brain work in patterns. But creative thinking is pattern breaking thinking. So we need to find a way to think creatively. I recall in one of your podcasts, you mentioned that we need to learn how to use AI, but I added to your discussion the other day that we need to learn how to use AI creatively. And one way how to use AI creatively is experiment with prompts. So as an educator, I see AI being used as, let's say, productivity improvement tool. But I also want to recall an article that I read about a Lego Serious Play summary by Desmond Eng, when he summarized different ways of using Lego Serious Play in education as a learning and thinking tool. And I actually like this idea. And I can, because AI for me is a tool, I also look at AI as the learning and thinking tool. So students can use, and this is typically how students use it, as the learning tool. They enter the prompt just to get some idea about what they want to learn, and that's how they learn from it. Educators actually need to look at AI, in my view, as the thinking tool and make students to appreciate AI and a thinking tool. So that's why I encourage students to look at the input part of AI and experiment with a prompt. It's a good idea to have some prompts ready and use them when needed. As I said in the beginning, it's a productivity improvement tool as well. So that can help. But to use AI as a thinking tool to overcome this fixedness and break your patterns of your brain is then we probably need to experiment with inputs. And as I say, like human brain, we speak about going outside the box. So the way to enhance outside the box thinking is enhance the box. So how can we do that? We either increase the knowledge in the domain that we are studying, or go beyond what we think, right? So then experimentation, constant like trying. So you can use poem, anecdote, or joke in your input and see what results AI gives. So learn
Yeah.
the technology by experimenting with it.
Yeah, I love that, and I think experimenting is the cornerstone of creativity. It's, you know, trying new things and being okay with knowing if it's going to fail and moving forward. So, would you be able to give a lot of the listeners, some of them may be students, some of them may be business people who are trying to feel like they want to use AI creatively? Are you able to give me a specific example, kind of like the one I gave, where I was like, "What can I sell these people?" Like, can you give maybe a specific example of what would maybe be a helpful or good prompt in your opinion versus a prompt that may not be as helpful? Like, how would you like specifically write a prompt?
Well, there are many existing, let's say, abbreviation about prompts, and of course, I experiment with them as well. But even with the same prompt, you may sometimes get different results. Like try it today, try it tomorrow. It kind of gives because it's the algorithm, right? It's a machine.
Mhm.
Uh, but again, I prefer a free play, so it's always different. Like break the pattern, use it differently, like
Mhm.
input something like in a different way, not the way how prompt is written, and see. My idea here and encouraging is just to make people appreciate that AI can be useful, and appreciation will come only by using it. AI is not like Microsoft Excel when you need to memorize formula and it will always give you the same result if you use the formula. AI
Mhm.
may give different result, but the way to use AI is just to try experimenting with it. And especially true that what educators will be looking at is how to make AI use of AI as a thinking tool. I ask my students just experiment and they do it.
I love that. And it makes me think of, but it's hard, right? Because I've been in a situation where I've been trying to either get one of the art things to create a slide for my presentation or do something in Chat GPT. And sometimes I get frustrated because it's not giving me what I'm looking for. And I think that comes back to this idea of persevering and just experimenting and trying and failing and regenerating. I know that a lot of people talk about prompts where they say it's most helpful if you give them context. So the one I gave was like, I'm a keynote speaker. I speak on creativity. I'm going to this small business and entrepreneur conference. Do you feel that that background is necessary? Or even I learned a tip from Dan Pink that you can go into Chat GPT and go into your customized settings and tell it a lot about you so that it can give you ideas based on your kind of context. Do you find that helpful or not helpful in the context of fluency of ideas?
It is for sure helpful. It is for sure helpful. But one way can how that prompt part can work, we can kind of have a dialogue with Chat GPT, and that's also interesting. So we can ask AI to generate a list of 5, 10, 20 items, and then from that list select two, and then ask our input as a human. And
Yeah.
when that get that input, create some unique and creative version of the product that can come up with the three different words, two selected by AI, one by human, and we can repeat this exercise multiple times.
Yeah, you know, I
Also,
have a
also
specific.
like I personally use it for some headlines for my papers or for something that I write. AI really does a good job when it takes your information, summarize, and gives you some creative, let's say, heading. That's also, I know that for this podcast you also use AI to generate the heading, and it's really cool.
Unleash. I swear, Fuat, everything is unleash. I don't know if it's because I'm a veterinarian. I don't think so. It's like unleash. And even if I say, please don't unleash anything, it'll say, I'm sorry. Or and then it unleashes something again. But I love that example. We have a LinkedIn, someone on LinkedIn that's mentioned, love that idea of using AI as a learning thinking tool. That's why I call it a muse. It's just like throwing spaghetti against the wall. And one of the things I like to bring up, which we didn't talk about, but it's the accessibility, because I have ADHD, and when I write, it can be very difficult for me to organize my thoughts. So I'll often use ChatGPT to say, hey, I want to write an article about creativity and AI. I really want to talk about how important it is for divergent thinking and fluency of ideas. Can you give me some, like an outline? And it will give me a good outline. And I rarely use the output it gives me, but I do use that like, oh, introduction, you know, like, because I tend to jump in the middle. And so I find it really helpful as someone with ADHD. And I don't know, but I'm sure there's other learning disabilities or other challenges people have, that they can use AI as a tool to increase their productivity, not because it's taking over the creativity, but because it's helping give you that structure. And I'm like you, I have a conversation with ChatGPT. In fact, I was doom scrolling one night, and on some Instagram profile, someone said, what's that word? What's a word for when you're hungry, but you have nothing in the house that you want to eat? So I thought, oh, I'll just put it into ChatGPT. It came up with some amazing ideas. It's had nibble sorrow. It was gastrono misery. And it was so creative. And then I could ask it, you know what? I like the nibble sorrow one. Can you give me 5 more examples like that? And if you drill down on something and then you throw it a curveball, like what if I was French? What if it was half French, half English? So I love this idea of experimentation, helping you amplify your own thinking. I don't think either of us are suggesting you copy and paste the output from ChatGPT and pretend it's your work. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, Fuat.
No, but your comment make me also to think about the domain, because from the research on creativity, I know that creativity is domain specific. And one way how I can see also AI can support or boost creativity is when in a brainstorming session, and that's I also actually use with my students, because I ask them a question, what is your definition of creativity? Then I turn it to, what do you think the artist, engineer, or like say someone else's definition of creativity would be? And this is important because creativity is domain specific. And when I say that, I mean like filmmaker may not necessarily be creative artist and vice versa. So professional cook may not necessarily be a creative business person, as vice versa. Again, it's domain specific. And when we do a brainstorming session, we may not have a domain expertise in the room, in particular like room. Let's say, like example, I'm developing a new computer mouse, and I need an input from ergonomist, and I don't have that person in the room. I may use AI as the domain expert, of course, with some precautions here, just for a first, let's say, brainstorming session, to at least understand what are the things I don't know about ergonomic part of that, but at least I need to consider. So AI can also be your kind of helper, at least for the first meeting. Not necessarily it will give all accurate information, but it can really expand and support the brainstorming session. So the main expertise is something that AI can also be used, and that I explain to my business students too.
Yeah, and I love that we talked about that, about how you can use it as like a substitute expert, and that's kind of like one of the divergent thinking exercises that you can do. And one of the ones I do is when I do some divergent thinking exercises, I'll say, okay, now, and at the beginning, I'm like, think of a famous person, any famous person alive or dead. And then when they do the divergent test, I said, okay, what would your famous person do? What would Steve Jobs do? What would Taylor Swift do? What would Oprah do in this situation? And yeah, like there's 2 parts to that. So yes, like creativity and applied creativity really needs that domain specific. Like I don't know how to carve a sculpture because I don't have the years of experience of knowing how hard to hit the chisel. And so you need that knowledge to be able to be creative in a domain, like you said. Conversely to that, sometimes we get that curse of knowledge because we're immersed and we're an expert in an area, we're not able to see other possibilities. So I love your suggestion of using AI as a substitute expert, but also a substitute idiot, maybe, because when we know that the evidence has shown that there's a book, one of my favorite books called In Defense of Troublemakers by Charlene Nemeth, and also research to show that if you're a group of experts and you bring in someone who has no idea about your domain, they might not contribute an idea that's helpful, but it will make your ideas better by having that person in the room. Same with someone who's dissenting. If someone's dissenting against an opinion of the group, it really annoys everybody and they feel like it stops progress, but it actually makes that idea better. What do you think about that idea of also having the expert, and we'll talk about the pitfalls of that in a minute, but also of using it as the quote unquote idiot, I'm going to call that. I don't know if that's PC or I shouldn't be saying that
Yeah,
word.
that's totally complement what I said. Again, in one way or another, we need the feedback from AI, pretending to be an expert or an idiot, to support the brainstorming session, because all ideas are welcome. That's the whole purpose of this brainstorming session. We don't kill ideas, and even some idiot ideas can also help experts to kind of move forward. Oh, we didn't think about it. I can also complement to that. It's another technique in creative brainstorming is question storming, when you can also use AI, and instead of like you brainstorm idea, you brainstorm questions. So you may You write a prompt and say, hey, here's my statement, here's my problem, what are the questions I need to ask, and then just make AI to come up with lots of questions, and then use this question as an input to your brainstorming session. So that's worked very well as well.
Yeah. Hi, Shannon. Shannon says, love that you opened up this topic. I think something we're not talking about. I think people either love or hate AI and they don't know how they can use it as a tool. And I'm so excited. If you're watching this, please give me a comment where you're watching it from. If you have questions for Fuat of how you can use AI in your business, or if you're an educator, or just in your daily life, please ask us questions. So let's talk a little bit now about the elephant in the room, which is the pitfalls of creativity. I know that many people complain that, especially when it comes to facts, ChatGPT can be inaccurate. And I recently was learning through some podcasts that they call this hallucinating, which I think is hilarious. I don't know why, but they say ChatGPT can hallucinate. It can invent articles, it can invent statistics, and it can invent expertise. So I think you talked about this a little bit before, but like, how do you reconcile that with with being an this idea of being an expert, but sometimes it's not an expert, it just makes things up.
Well, this concept means that the technology doesn't have enough information to generate an accurate output, so it pretends it creates something because there's a prompt and it needs to respond without like real accuracy. So that's the warning that I usually give to students, saying, hey, it may give you an output, but then you don't need necessarily to trust it or completely take it, even if we use it as the learning tool. But on the other hand, we have to appreciate, and from the theory of creativity, we know that creativity is based on existing knowledge. So we come up with creative ideas based on what we know. And I mentioned it in my domain discussion. That's, again, your expertise makes you to come up with a new idea because you already know something about it. So I feel that ChatGPT also has this knowledge base, let's say, which it search through its search engines. And it may not be accurate now, but it's evolving. And who knows what can be in the future. So we can't really completely ignore it. But again, ChatGPT is here to stay. We need to continuously exploring, using, and experimenting it.
Yeah, and I've noticed with my ChatGPT that it started giving me sources, so I guess at least I can go to that source. We've got some people here. We got a big fan of yours. Helena's here, and Shannon and Lori from Calgary, Victoria, North Bay. Thank you all so much for joining. If you have a way that you use AI for your creativity, please share it, and I'd love to hear it. But yeah, I do notice that ChatGPT sometimes is wrong. And I think I think the important thing to recognize if we're using ChatGPT specifically is that it's a language model. It is not like a research model. It's not meant to be like, but I've played around with other AI tools. I don't know if you have, Fuat, but I read an article that was that study from Nature magazine about AI outperforming humans. I actually used an AI tool called SciSummary. So you can give it the article and it will summarize it for you with the main points, which again is a bit of a slippery slope because you don't want to ignore if you're an academic, you really need to read through the materials and methods and statistics. But what do you think about those kinds of tools to help, and what's the line between students kind of cheating and using AI to help them?
Oh, that's probably the most difficult question academics have right now. But gladly, some other tools are also evolving, like plagiarism checkers and everything else. What I usually do, I always ask students to, I actually now focus on writing part of assessment rather than multiple choice true false, because that gives me a chance to see the authentic voice of the student. And then when I see the other work which can potentially be created through AI, that's how I can at least compare. But
Yes,
that's
if you see Unleash in a paper, you're like AI.
no, I had circumstances, of course, when students use AI, but that's why I have their original paper written in the class, maybe the first class, where I hear the authentic voice, and that gives me the understanding the student's voice. But I want to have a little comment about your previous statement about AI being mostly text-based. ChatGPT text-based. Recently, I start experimenting also with symbols, although it doesn't really give a perfect, let's say, outcome. So try it right now. So ask the AI, can you generate me a symbol of airplane taking off, right? So it gives you something, but it's not perfect. But I'm sure, as everything else, it may evolve to something else. And I plan to use this exercise as well, because it's not only words and ideas, but it can also be symbols that AI can really help with.
So are you talking about like, when people put like semicolons and parentheses together to make a picture? Is that what you're
Yeah,
asking me to do?
something
Oh,
like a
that's great.
symbol. That's like cool. I explored it recently, and I started experimenting with it as well.
Oh, that's a very creative way of using it. I love it. And I think, creativity benefits from multiple ideas. So, and novelty. So trying new things and talking to other people about how they're using it. Shannon says she had a compliment when ChatGPT didn't rewrite something and asked her to rewrite. So it was like, yeah, that's good, Shannon. And another person that's just popping up on my platform is a LinkedIn user, finding it very interesting. Thank you so much for talking about the subject. And speaking of like spaghetti against the wall and just like connecting and collaborating with people, I'd like to just, with respect to creativity, mention how we met. Like, I think I reached out to you because you were organizing a conference and I was like, do you hire speakers? And then you're like, Ashley, I'm really into creativity. I was like, what? And then we got chatting and now we have this amazing connection and you're here on Creative Lifescaping, sharing your knowledge. So I think just this idea of if we take this kind of flavor of AI and just like jumping in and trying new things and just giving it new prompts and then taking that into our life as well and treating it as if, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, I totally agree. Is just interesting how we met, and I believe this world of advocates of creativity unfortunately is small, but with AI coming, I think the necessity to teach it as a tool will be growing as well, and hopefully that may change the perspective of creativity as well. So that's my personal hope. But yes, I can for sure see that AI can be used for daily, let's say, create everyday creativity. Like when I am on my way to my work, I use AI, just like, again, experiment. I enter different prompts to see what the output will be, and sometimes take an output, take my own thought, and just connect it and use it again. My invite and my suggestion to everyone here and who will be watching is overcome this fixedness of your brain. Okay, the prompt is good, it really helps. If your goal is to use AI as the productivity improvement tool, then yes, probably you need to have your own prompts, create your Excel spreadsheet, use them, copy and paste. But as I said, AI can also be used as learning and thinking tool, and I see a big potential of AI as a thinking tool, and that's what educators will for sure will focus on in the near future, and moving forward with AI. Then experiment with it. Like, don't rely on prompts only. Like, use your own creativity to experiment with it.
Yeah, channel your inner kindergartner. What would a kindergartner do with AI? They'd ask how it could get the cookies from the top shelf in the pantry, maybe. Lori Dawn says, I have not tried ChatGPT, but look forward to the day when it can write my incident analyses and check it for content. You could probably do that right now if you're editing it and reading it, because it's repetitive from report to report. And I mentioned it briefly, but you're welcome to ping me if you want more information. But there is a feature in ChatGPT where you can put custom, I forget what it's called, but it's like like you put your details, like, who are you? What do you want me to talk about? And there's a great article that Daniel Pink, author of The Power of Regret, he shared an article from someone else that says how you can input things in there, because a lot of times it's like, remember, I'm a robot. And you can say, don't tell me you're a robot. I don't need to know that. Like, you can put stuff in this custom field. So that's great. Shannon says, thank you for being advocates of creativity. Yes, AI can promote creativity. And yeah, I mean, this is fantastic, Fuat. I am so excited to hear more about like your research in this area and how your PhD is going. You're going to be a doctor of AI and creativity. I think that's amazing. And before we wrap up, and I would love to know, I ask this of every guest, and I almost forgot to ask you, and you brought it up, which is great. I would love to know if there was a story that you'd like to share that made you feel a little uncomfortable and put you out of your comfort zone, because we know that's so important for creativity.
Well, I'm an educator, and I have many students, and I have had more than 1,000 students so far. I always try to remember students' name and call them by name, and that's how I also train my brain and thinking. And sometimes I make silly mistakes by calling students wrong names, and that's I'm always in an awkward spot. Oh, I'm sorry. Like, trying to be nice by remembering their names sometimes make me to look odd. I think that's the point where I'm sometimes embarrassed. I'm sorry for my students and I apologize, but that's the mistake I do sometimes
Well, we all do
in
that.
the
I want to
classroom.
like, you can do tricks. Have you heard of these tricks? You can do like, if someone's name is like Cindy, you could imagine them as like another Cindy, like Cindy Crawford. You know, she has that mole. So like there's ways that you can remember names, but it doesn't work for me. It's very hard. So yeah. Lori also mentions that at the reprocessing conference, the potential to have AI monitoring the inspection of instrument lumens rather than the human watching the camera. The AI could mark the spots where there might be contamination. So it's basically identifying. So that's more around pattern recognition, I think, is what Lori's talking about there, right?
Yes.
Which is not a generative AI. So for the AI newbies in the room, there's generative AI. What's the other kind of AI? I don't even know.
It's image processing.
Okay, so generative AI is ChatGPT. That's where you're like giving it something, or one of those art things where you're like, make me a picture of a beautiful blue day. That would be a generative AI. Is that right?
Yeah, text outcome. Yes, text-based.
Text, yeah. Okay, perfect. Yes, it's a wonderful tool for people with language-based learning disabilities. Absolutely. And I love, Fuat, your way of saying just be creative, get over yourself, use AI in new and interesting ways, because you might find a way to use it that works specifically for your application, and it might change everything for you. So does anybody have any other questions? Chat them quickly into LinkedIn. Otherwise, Fuat, do you have any other last thoughts for us as people leading the frontier of creativity and AI?
I really appreciate you doing this podcast and this job. I think the voice of creative advocates or advocates for creativity must be heard. And thank you for your great job.
Oh, thank you. And please connect with me or connect with Fuat if you want more on AI and creativity. I have a ton of content. This is going to be recorded. If you're watching the recording, there's much more content on my YouTube channel. Again, you can find Fuat on LinkedIn and watch for his thesis coming to you in probably a few years.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Take care. I gotta figure out how to stop this now. I haven't done this for a while. End stream. There we go. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.